Welcome back to Knights of the World number 4. Today we have joining us Kathrin Hutson. She's a writer, she's an achiever, and she's overcome addiction before, which already puts her very high in my standards for a lot of people. All right, how are you doing today, Kathrin?
I'm doing great, Ian. Thank you. How are you?
Good.
Good.
So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm from Lakewood, Colorado, which actually just moved back to Colorado for the first time in about 10 years, just this last summer, which is cool to be back home where I am. So, in a nutshell, my story, I guess I would say my life basically started when I was 10. It's about as far back as I remember. That's when my parents got divorced. It's when I actually started writing. It's when my memories start of life. So, sometimes we may forget certain things before a certain period in time, which is probably intentional. So I turned to writing actually when I was 10 because of all the things that I was going through in my life at the time. It was a really difficult divorce, and I was the kid in my family who had everything together and who was doing well in school and continued to be that person for a long time. And my outlet was writing. I was also, one of those, not one of those. I was a kid growing up all the way through high school, and then maybe the beginning of college. I never felt like I fit in with anyone. I was a super sci-fi fantasy nerd already at the time, and I was writing, and I had been playing piano since I was 5, and I was actually in the International Baccalaureate program in high school, which is I don't know if if you're familiar with that. It's like a step above honors classes. So when it was a lot of work. It really was. During the day, during class times, but I graduated high school with my entire freshman year of college credits transferred already when I went to college. Yeah, it was a cool experience in that way. When I spent more time writing and still feeling like I didn't fit in than I did studying, which I guess fortunately for me, I still graduated and made it out of there without much studying. Not something I would recommend, but it was the way things worked out. So then I went to the University of Colorado at Boulder and majored in their creative writing fiction program. And the summer after I graduated from high school, I found myself in that world of drug use and had a dance with heroin addiction. I wasn't a dance. It was a couple of years. And that was one of those things that I thought at the time would help me to feel like I fit in better. It took me a while to discover that was not the case. All the things that we sometimes try to fill something inside ourselves with, with the outside stuff. I wasn't paying enough attention to what was happening on the inside. And so, all my plans for my college career and moving on with the job I wanted, which was actually, I wanted to be a writing professor and teach it and then keep writing my books. That didn't happen. I ended up going to rehab, and I was in the hospital multiple times and struggled with this heroin addiction until finally I found my way into recovery and found my way into, reinventing who I wanted to be after everything I had been through beforehand. And I met my husband 2 years after I got clean, and we've been moving across the country together ever since.
Yeah.
we've been married almost 6.5 years. We have a 4.5-year-old daughter, and now at this point, I worked in personal injury law firms and countless restaurants before I decided that I wanted to work solely within the literary industry. So I started my independent editing business, working with other fiction authors, and I did that for about 5 years before I finally published my first book. And that was, after a long road of many, 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 over 100 rejection letters for my first book from traditional agents. And my first book that was rejected by agents, I did decide to self-publish. And so I am an indie author. About 6 months after I published it, it became an Amazon bestseller, which was incredibly encouraging in the time. So I decided to keep going. This is a path for me. About 2.5 years ago, I stumbled upon the world of ghostwriting fiction. So I write for various authors and larger publishing companies under someone else's name. And that's the other half of my job. So it's my day job now. I write. It's more than 40 hours a week, but it's what I love to do. It's my favorite thing in the whole world. So at this point now, my day job is, my creative passion, and that's me in a nutshell.
So, what are some of the books that you've written? Can you explain them a little bit for me, please?
Definitely. I have, as of right now, as we're talking together, I have 10 books out currently. The first 2 are the Ginona's Children duology. It's just 2 of them. And those were my first 2. It's really dark, grimdark, epic fantasy. I like to describe it as the Jungle Book meets Kill Bill with dragons. That paints a picture for you. And then after that, I put out the Unclaimed trilogy, which is also dark epic fantasy. It's a little on the lighter side. There's not nearly as much blood and gore and violence, but there is some. And I released that trilogy actually the year after my daughter turned 1. So I had rededicated myself to writing because, when you have a kid, everything changes. Yeah. You gotta work a little harder for some things. And that trilogy is just really fun, and it's lighter. And it was sort of an experiment for myself to see whether or not I could stick to a writing schedule, which I did do. And then I have the Blue Helix series, which is LGBTQ plus dystopian sci-fi. Sleepwater Beat is the first book in that series, and I released that in November of 2018, and that is the book that made me an international best-selling author, which was fantastic. And then that kind of kick-started some things for me. And the second book, Sleepwater Static, released in May of last year, and that was also an international bestseller. So that series, kind of exploded and went to some cool places. And that one's really super close to my heart. It has a lot of me in it, and it has a lot of discussion and dialogue and exploration of social change, how we come about that, certain things that I wanted to make more accessible for people to consider and explore and dive into, while also, of course, making it a fun story.
Uh-huh.
That is the number one goal. And then most recently, I have the first 3 books out in my new dark urban fantasy series, Accessory to Magic. And that one's even crazier than all the others.
Mm-hmm.
It's doing really well. The book 3 just released today, and that one is an apprentice witch with a criminal past inherits a magical bank that can think for itself. And the clientele are almost as dangerous as what's inside their safety deposit boxes. So it's got a lot of magic, a lot of attitude, a lot of violence and action, and a whole bunch of snark. It's one of those horror comedies.
Uh-huh.
So, those are my books. There you are.
So what are some of what is like the favorite one you've ever written?
That's so hard.
Uh-huh.
It's a hard question. I would probably have to say that this newest book that just released today, if we're looking at which one is my favorite for how much fun it was and how much it surprised me as I was writing it, it would be that one. And that's The Secret Coin, book 3 in that series. And I found myself writing, obviously, of course, really intense action scenes and lots of mystery and plot twists and shockers. But then I also found myself writing, in a couple of really intense scenes, pieces of the main character Jessica's story and her experiences that directly reflected so much of my own in, a different way, of course, because I don't have that kind of magic. But I found myself, really connecting with her so much, completely without meaning to, in that same kind of way. So, this main character has had legal issues and has a dark past and is afraid to connect with herself because of it. And, I recognized a lot of my own journey in that when I was writing it. And then, writing epic fight scenes is one of my favorite things to do in the whole world. So that was just really, really fun. I guess if we're talking about what my favorite book is that I've written in terms of how meaningful it was for me to write and the kind of feedback that I got from it, from readers and from people who really tapped into the messages that I wanted to send with that, was Sleepwater Static, the second book in the Blue Helix series. And that was with the Blue Helix series, I wanted to focus on bringing to light a lot of different aspects of discrimination and to lend voice to marginalized communities, quite a few of which I belong to myself. So it was important to me, and that sort of window into these marginalized communities facing discrimination through the lens of a group of people in this series who have developed a sort of superpower, but the world hates them for it. And so they get hunted down because of it. And I also explored a lot of racial injustice and systemic racism and how that interplays with xenophobia and discrimination and hate crimes against anyone who is, considered different or outside the status quo or the norm. So that would be my other favorite, I guess, because it had a lot to say, and I was terrified of whether or not it would have said what I wanted it to, whether or not people would have picked up on those messages. And they did. They really did. So that was awesome.
So what are some of like the favorite things? So I know obviously writing is like the best part about being an author, but what's like the second best part? Like what's the
Oh,
funnest?
yeah, the definitely getting emails from my readers, 100%. Or getting anything from my readers. So I do have I've been running a newsletter for years and years and years, and so some of my readers have been with me since the very beginning, which is awesome. And at this point, I get emails from certain readers that I immediately recognize them right away. I have about almost 10,000
Oh
readers on
wow.
my author newsletter. Yeah, so when I get emails from my readers over and over again, from the same people, they stand out in my mind. I have my favorites, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
but I love getting emails from my readers. I love hearing what people think about my books, of course, but then also, it has surprised me so much over the years how much of their own personal lives my readers share with me, just because
Mm-hmm.
we have that connection, which is super fun. I had one reader who's actually blew my mind, but a couple years ago, he told me that the only other fiction author that he had ever read besides me was Stephen King, which Stephen King is like one of my favorites. So to hear
Mm-hmm.
that was really incredible. And this reader told me that he really loved my books, and then he made me. I'm not sure how he carved it somehow. A wooden dragon after reading my first two books that definitely have dragons in them. And it's like 8 inches long, and it's a it's a big piece. And he mailed it to me to my PO box as a surprise, and that was just one of the coolest things ever to get a fan package like that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I know my favorite thing about just I know I don't typically get feedback, but the idea just really like the idea of like someone actually just some random guy could live in any country, could live in any type of condition, and they could be
Yeah.
like, I love what you're doing, and that just means like, wow, someone out there in the world cares enough to contact me personally and be like, I like what you're doing, keep it up.
Yes.
And that's like when I'm getting emails and stuff like that about to be interviewed and stuff like that, it's just everyone's so nice. And I thought people were going to be like, okay, this is exactly what we're doing. Give me a date, I'll be there. But everyone's like all nice and friendly, and that's not what I came into thinking. I thought everyone's going to be like, yeah, this is what we're doing. Something just fell in my room. Anyway,
You just
I
got really
thought
excited.
I thought everyone was gonna be like, "Oh wow, this is so structured," and then now everyone's like, "Oh, if I don't get in, that's okay. Please keep it up. I love what you're doing," and it just like it makes me smile. I'm just like this random person doesn't even know me, probably
Hmm.
doesn't even know what we are, and then
Right.
just are just like, "Well, you're great because I like what you're doing," and that just always makes me smile, and I feel that's exactly what it is for you.
Yeah, it is. It is like that, and it's also kind of um, a mind blowing thing to consider the fact that just being ourselves and continuing to do what we do and not trying to be anything else other than what we enjoy, and creating these things and sharing them with other people,
Mm-hmm.
that's enough, to reach other people out there and to get them interested in what we're doing. And yeah, I totally agree with you. There's a reader who's been following me around for a while, not literally physically, but
Uh
he's
huh.
been on my list for a long time. And he works on a trans Alaskan pipeline. And I think he's in his 50s. Um, and he'll email me every 8 to 10 weeks when he leaves the station when they're all closed in and they don't have the internet, or when he's
Mm-hmm.
been done with 4 weeks of 12-hour shifts. and he'll say that he read my newest book, and he'll tell me about what's going on in his life in Alaska, in the middle of nowhere, with his team. And it's just incredible to be able to, I don't know, connect with so many different kinds of people and in so many different places. And yeah, it's really fun.
It's just how much an impact it has on everyone's lives, and it's just like, wait, you mean I like helped you with this, or like
Right.
I was going through this trouble, I was stressed all about school, but I read your book and I loved it. And it's just you're impacting people's lives when you're doing what you love, but they love what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like
I love the way you said that. Yeah.
it's that like it's like you probably not writing. I know me personally, I wouldn't be writing. I'd be like, well, I have to write because it's my duty to help others. I'd write because I love it, but someone else might love what I do, and then I'll continue to write. My main goal isn't to be like, you guys have to feel better. If you read this, you'll feel better. But it's the idea is that I love what I'm doing, and I hope you do too.
Yes, and it comes through when that's the original intention. It definitely shows. And I've recently found in the last couple of years actually that starting from that place of doing it because you love it first eventually does kind of blend with loving to do it and wanting to bring more of that same I don't know, that same effect to people. It's like a dual, I'm doing it for myself first and foremost, and then also I am doing it for the people who I know now at this point, after almost 6 years of doing this, who appreciate exactly what I'm doing because of the way that I do it. And so it is for them in some ways, but I'm never trying to shove my books down anybody's throat.
I think I was doing a little too much of an exaggeration.
It's okay.
So do you have any advice you'd give someone in high school or having trouble like figuring out what they want to do with their life?
Oh, yeah. I would say the biggest piece of advice would be to not worry about it. I think that, it's hard to know exactly what we want to do, exactly who we are, exactly where we're headed. I was lucky enough in high school, to have already been writing and to know exactly what I wanted to do in one form or another. I went to college for writing, and that was my roadmap from the very beginning. It did not turn out anything like I thought it would, but that, yeah, I would say to not worry about it, and to not let anyone else's opinions of what you think you want to do, or maybe even what you want to do, affect or color the way you make those decisions moving forward. No one in my family thought it was a good idea to go to college for creative writing. And there was a lot of, well, if you get a degree in creative writing, what are you going to do with that? And like, be an English teacher, it's pretty much all you can do. That was what I got actually from quite a few people. And I already knew it was what I wanted to do, so I ignored all of that. But even if I had been on the fence, I would say it's, to not let anyone else make those decisions for you. And now I am not an English teacher, and I make a full-time living off my writing. So it's it can be done, and that there's no set recipe or plan or any kind of map that anyone can make for your life and where you're going and following your passions, except for you. So I guess maybe that's three in one, but those
Yeah.
were the most important things. Yeah.
All right. I'd like to thank Kathrin for coming out here and telling about herself and how she loves writing. And I encourage you all to read her books, or buy them if you can. They are up here on the screen. Here, it's the link to our website where you can learn more about her. You can buy her books. You can sign up for her newsletter and everything. And then right here are our socials. So follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and subscribe and like. And we'll see you guys next time on the Noble Knights podcast. See ya.